everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy, I'm the host of the show, and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. The year's winding down. If you're downloading this the day it comes out, you've got hours, mere hours left of 2021. I'll be honest, I am nonplussed by everything that's happened over this last year or two. Hey, maybe since 2008, really. That's been where I've been living. But regardless, I hope you have a good New Year's Eve. I hope 2022 has something promising. That's not true. I'm being way too pessimistic. There are lots of promising things going on. A lot of organizing going on in unions, a lot of people fighting solidarity with each other, so a lot of mutual aid. So that stuff all gives me hope. And you know what else gives me hope? Why, doing this show, very interesting episode today. This is Robert Haimer. If you don't know who Robert is, why don't I read you his bio right now? Born in Los Angeles, musician Robert Haimer, aka Artie Barnes, began playing music with his friend, actor Bill Mumy, in high school, recording songs for their own amusement as Barnes and Barnes. But when Dr. Demento began playing their music in the late 70s, they began playing more professionally, bolstered by the popularity of their track Fish Heads, among many others. Since then, they've released over a dozen albums, mostly on Rhino Records, and their latest, Pancake Dream, is now available on Demented Punk Records. If you like beautiful-looking vinyl, well, buddy, I've got an album for you. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot lately about not just the art that formed me in my teenage years, but a lot of the stuff that I was going to say, like, put me on the path to being a weird kid, but I think I was already on that path. I think more what I'm talking about is the stuff that reinforced my weirdness. And Fish Heads was 100% one of those things. And so when I saw that Robert and Bill had a new album coming out, I thought, I got to do some investigating. Because it turns out Dr. Demento was this huge nexus of weird artists that influenced me without me ever hearing outside of maybe like a documentary. I know I've seen Dr. Demento in a doc, some Weird Al video. I'm not sure. I mean, but Weird Al on his own is such a huge influence on the person I became. But the Monkees, which was playing on repeats on MTV when I was a kid, Fish Heads, Weird Al, all very formative. And it was very interesting to talk to Robert because in some very real way, his creative DNA got inside me. And talking to him, a lot of things made sense. I don't know if I cracked his surface, but we got to some interesting places, so I hope you enjoy this one. If you do, and you're new to the show, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've talked to hundreds of writers and musicians and comedians and actors. Everyone from Battlestar Galactica creator Ron D. Moore to Mac McCon from Superchunk to the creator of The Leftovers and Watchmen, Damon Lindelof, X-Men creator Chris Claremont, and plenty of other people. So check out those episodes. If you like what you hear and you want to subscribe to the show, you can do that on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast from. And I've got some amazing interviews coming up, including John Linnell from They Might Be Giants. That was brilliant. And John Vanderslice, Nels Klein, the guitarist of Wilco, and plenty of other really cool talks. So stay tuned for that. I hope you have a good New Year's Eve and a great start to 2022. But for now, let's talk to Robert. I couldn't find a lot about you online. I don't know if that's by design, if you've purposely I don't want people to know who I am.
No, you know what? There's stuff out there. If you do a deep dive on YouTube and our Facebook page and stuff, we're pretty transparent.
That's my problem. I'm like, I just look for like written stuff instead
Yeah.
of videos. But I am curious. I think you grew up in Los Angeles. Is that right?
Yes. Both Art Barnes and I, my partner and I, grew up in L.A. I'm born and raised in L.A. And all my life I've told people that, and they just don't believe me. It's like, wow, it's impressive. I don't know.
I mean, I believe you, but I'm very curious because my wife and I moved out here about 4 years ago from New York, and we're still adjusting, I would say 4 years later. And so people that are born here, I am very curious about their lives, how they grew up, because it seems like such a strange culture here to me. And obviously it probably does not feel strange for you.
Well, it's all I know. So, right. I've only moved like 1 or 2 miles away from where I grew up. I'm only a mile from the actual house I lived in for 40 years. So, yeah, I just know the West LA by way of Lumania culture. So it's all good.
Wait, what, Lumania?
Well, Lumania is the mythical place where Art, my partner, and I come from. It's ruled by the great newts, of course, the political powers that be in Lumania. But, we say that with a wink in our eyes. But people that know Barnes & Barnes stuff for the last 43 years, they are steeped in the Lumanian culture.
But what was the reality? So where in West LA did you grow up?
I just call it West LA. Actually, it's called Cheviot Hills. It's a really nice middle-classy type of area. Like I say, a mile from where I live. And I had a really great little upbringing there. So, yeah, that's also where Art Barnes, we also call him Bill Mooney, is from. We're 3 blocks away from each other, but never realized it.
I mean, I want to go back to this in a second, but I am kind of curious, the mythology of the band and your actual life. How entwined are those two things?
Well, we live it from the inside out. They're very entwined. Long story short, I met Art when, Art was 12. I was 12. He went to a neighboring grammar school, and, he was Billy Mooney. He was the big him and Ronnie Howard, like the biggest child stars of the 60s. So we realized he went to the school over from us. So they had a Halloween carnival, 1966. I know I'm dating myself, but who cares? 55 years ago, my friends and I went over to his school to look for Billy Mooney. We wanted to meet him. He was on Lost in Space. He was a uber star. I was a nothing little 12-year-old. So we found him, and I will try to condense my stories, but he and I, became friends, not best friends at age 12, but 12 and 13, we had the similar interests. We collected comic books. We were chasing young 14-year-old girls and that, the typical stuff. And musically, we had similar musical tastes, even though Mumi was into more Bob Dylan and folky stuff and country stuff a little bit more than me. And I was coming from a place of Jim Morrison and the Doors and the Beatles, although we both love the Beatles. So, yeah, I got close with Billy Mooney. It was fun. We went to the same park, which was 3 blocks from our house, and he lived right near me. So we started hanging out. When he was 14, the Lost in Space ended, and he came to my junior high, the 9th grade. And he basically didn't know anybody. So he would hate me to say this, he cleaved on to me a bit. And I was proud to be Billy Mooney's friend. It was fun. And, the first months he was at the junior high, and we were in the same homeroom. So we got even closer. We've been best friends and life mates as best friends and business partners and music partners since we were 14. So he was in my homeroom, and we'd hang out with each other. And first month he was there every day at recess and during lunch, he was getting mobbed because he was just fresh off. Lost in Space was still running, first run shows. And the kids would just mob him, and teachers would have to break up the mobs. But I was at the center of the mob as kind of his protector. So it was fun for me. It's like, oh, that's, Billy Mooney's friend, Artie, or they call me Robert. So that was our history. And then at age 14, I bought an organ. He got a guitar, and we just started to play and jam. We had a band called Energy with a friend or two of ours, a drummer and another guitarist. And we were playing a couple bar mitzvahs and school dances. It was really fun. And then
Wait, hold on. Sorry.
Go ahead. Please interject anytime. Shut me up.
Playing bar mitzvahs?
We played maybe a bar mitzvah or two, a couple school dances, and and we would jam at my house, and we'd invite the girls over, and it was fun. We were just growing our hair long and becoming young hippies.
Uh-huh.
So yeah.
I mean, so wait, so 14. This is like the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s.
We're talking 1968, my friend.
Okay, so right in the middle of it, like right. Yeah. Okay, because I'm just trying to figure out, Okay, so when does mythology start to kind of creep in? Because this is what I'm kind of curious about. The way that you started talking, it's very interesting to me. There's this kind of it makes me think of like the Dead Milkmen, right? In the same kind of way, in terms of like, well, there is this kind of like humorous facet to the music at the same time, and this mythology and that stuff. The kind of the way that fiction and real life kind of mix together is really interesting, and like how you, Robert, as a creative person, kind of lives within that nexus, let's say.
Well, it just came natural, but the rest of the story is so. Briefly, you mentioned the Dead Milkmen, and I've heard their name for years. I do not know their music, but I should check it out because I keep hearing Dead Milkmen, Ween. Actually, the guys in Ween are Barnes and Barnes fans. They've been writing me for about 15 years and telling me they're Dean and Gene Ween. We're Art and Artie Barnes. Maybe they still part of our act. It's all good. It's fine. I'm happy with it. So anyway,
I don't know. That could be legally actionable.
No, I'm honored and flattered by any attention we ever get in life. It's, we're all vying for attention and then to be entertainers. So, okay, 1970-ish, 69, our band broke up, Moomies and my band. But by that time, we're at age 14, we were already calling each other Barnes and Barnes. Based on a Bill Cosby routine called Revenge, where Bill Cosby has a character named Junior Barnes. So we got the Barnes from that. I don't know where the art came from. We each called each other Art. I was not Artie until 1978. So 1970, day after Christmas, 1970, we were 16. We had rudimentary little crappy 2-track tape recorders. We said, let's write and record some stupid, silly, or dirty songs as Barnes and Barnes. Anything goes. Kitchen sink, throw it in there. But we'll be Barnes and Barnes, so we could get away with anything. And so that started a 6 or 7 year period of being 2 or 3 times a year. We'd get together. We were together every day anyway, hanging out and making music and, carousing, doing whatever 14, 15, 6-year-olds do. And so we would play and write and record, let's say 10, 12 songs in an 8-hour period as Barnes and Barnes, Art and Art Barnes. Anything goes, throw in the kitchen sink, like I said. And we have probably 125, 150 songs that we did over a 7-year period. And it was fun, and they'd be dirty, and they'd be silly, and they'd be stupid, and, poopy humor and all that kind of stuff.
Just as a goof for you guys?
A total goof.
You didn't want to share them with anyone?
I'll tell you, it was a complete private joke. And then we started to play it for a few friends, maybe some family and friends. Like, here's Pizza Face. Here's Socks and Sweat. Here's Smelly Finger Blues. And, Art and I would write the songs literally for 15 minutes and then spend 20 minutes to record it, do it 4 or 5 times till it sounded half decent. It was always me on piano or organ and him on guitar, and we'd sing it live. It was live to 2-track. And I do still have the tapes. He won't let me release them. But so we had 150 songs. We played it for friends. And meanwhile, I'm starting to listen to the Dr. Demento radio show. I hopefully you know who he is. He's been around for over 50 years, one of my dearest friends. So people were saying from 1973 to 77, send some of these to Dr. Demento. And I was listening to Demento every week with my dad or my girlfriend of the time, and mid to later 70s. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Dr. Demento's secretary will throw out the tape if we ever send a tape, So finally, 1978, we're about 24. We had a 4-track tape recorder, and the recordings were a little better. So Art and I were like, okay, let's take 3 of our songs, maybe redo 1 or 2 of them, and send it to Dr. Demento. So we took like a song called the Vomit Song, maybe Boogie Woogie Amputee, and these are all songs we had started when we were 20 years old in rudimentary versions, like I say. So we redid those songs, and the tape sat by my door, unmailed for weeks, thinking, Demento will never hear this. He's a big celebrity. His secretary will throw it out. Little did I not, I didn't know he didn't have a secretary. Finally, I mailed the tape. Forgot.
Wait, can I ask for about that? Because my wife and I were talking yesterday about sometimes like fear. Like it takes me a long time to do certain things. Like I had to finish a second draft of a script last month. And I could have finished it like a month earlier, but I was just afraid to like dig into it. Sure. Was that like when you said that it was just sitting there?
Yeah.
Right. Was it just like a procrastinating type thing? Was there a fear of like actually putting this thing out into the world in that way, or getting or having Dr. Demento reject it, like that kind of fear?
It's possibly that. Like I do remember. I remember this stuff clear as day. 43 years later, that I didn't think he would hear it. He has his people, his handlers would just, he probably gets 1 million tapes a week, which he doesn't. But that was probably my fear. So, but you know what? Our insecurities hold us back in life, as you know, and we have to fight through that. I try to teach my kids that. It's like, if I did 100 things to further my career for the last 50 years, 99 of them don't pan out. The tapes, the records, the cassettes, the phone calls that I make. It's all for naught. But if you don't try, you'll never know in life. So everybody has to do one thing, at least one thing well in life. Otherwise, there's not a lot of meaning. So yeah, it's hard to get over fear of doing that stuff. So we sent this tape finally. I forgot about it. 2 weeks later, I get Dr. Demento's a god to me. I'm listening to him every week for 5 years. I get a handwritten letter from him back, and it's like, it's mind-blowing. My parents like, you got a letter from Dr. Demento. I rip it open, and he's like, I really like your tape. He listened to it personally. I like it, but I can't use this song. It's too dirty. This one's too gross. And then I have this letter somewhere in my archives. He said, what else you got? So Art and I are all excited, and we had been working on early versions of our song Fish Heads from about 1976 on, and we have a couple versions that we have released the last 10 years. So we said, and we had the 4-track machine, like I said. So we said, let's record the definitive version of Fish Heads, because that was our best song out of 150 ideas. So Art went in the corner of the room, and in 20 minutes, he came up with 5 of the most astonishing verses. And hopefully you know what I'm talking about, the Fish Head song.
I do.
He came up with these 5 amazing verses. He came up with 7 or 8 verses. The guy's a genius. And I say that I love Art to death. He's my best friend, but he's just an astonishing lyric writer, musician, recording artist, comic book writer. He's a real Renaissance guy. He wears many hats. So he whipped out these 5 verses that were just great about fish heads and things they can and can't do. And I had written the chorus, the music. So we married the two together in a 3 or 4 hour recording session for Dr. Demento. It's all his fault. And I remember after it was done in 3 or 4 hours, I thought, this is really good. I had no idea it was going to change the trajectory of my career and our life, because Art and I, together and separately, wanted to just write pop music. I just wanted to either write it and or sing it.
Okay.
And I did continue to do that. But the big success became the Barnes and Barnes comedy, weird, abstract, bent, surreal comedy, scary stuff. And but anyway, it was a great little diversion, and it was so much fun. And we immediately, Fish Heads and a bunch of our other songs did so well on Dr. Demento's show, and he was on live here in LA every week, and then 150, 200 stations nationwide. So we were I knew people were listening. 40 years later, I'm still astonished how many people were listening and still write me that they listened early on. But we got the record deals, and we started making videos, which I'll go into detail. Just stop me and interject.
Well, I actually want to go back, because when did you first discover Dr. Demento?
My memories are pretty much 1973 to 74. He started pretty much in 1970. with a live show in LA. And then he was syndicated on 150 stations a week. So I can absolutely see myself in my living room with my dad and listening to his show on Sunday nights. And we'd start out, it was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and then it would start getting dark. And I can remember it getting dark and sitting there with my dad, who's gone 25 years now. But those are great memories for me. And then, like I said, friends were saying, send this stuff to Dr. Demento. And then we did. And here I am talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember bonding with my dad Sunday nights. We would watch In Living Color and Get a Life. It was on in the early 90s on Fox.
Yeah.
And that was a very formative, creative comedy experience for me, because those shows, very, very much propelled me in the direction I went in. And it seems like, you're what? You're like 18 or 19 at the time, maybe?
20-ish, 21, 23. Like that.
So you and your dad are close, I assume, then.
Well, we were, yeah. Outside of the bickering, of course.
Sure. But so, was that an important bonding experience for you?
The fact that I can see it in my mind's eye and I have a warm, fuzzy feeling about that stuff with my dad, yeah, that's important. That's important to me still. I carry it. I try to pay it forward with my kids. Not always easy, but I have 2 adult kids still at home now during COVID. And they went to college and they come back home. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, those are great memories of those are maybe the best memories I have of my dad.
I mean, outside of the bickering, you said, what was your relationship like as you were growing up?
I had my issues, and parents have to deal with their kids' issues. And I wish I could go back and say, yeah, I'm really sorry about that stuff now that I've evolved out of certain childhood or young adult issues. But yeah, you know what? I'm transparent. I'm not afraid to admit I had issues with my dad, but my dad was a great guy and hardworking and sober. That counted for a lot in life. And I miss him. And but we do have those Dr. Demento memories and a lot of other memories.
Yeah.
Now, don't start me on talking about my mother, of course.
I mean, what else jumps out to you from your youth, in regard to your dad?
Oh, my gosh. I know you're going to ask me a bunch of questions I've never had to consider to a live audience, but and it's all fine. I love it. My dad. Oh, God. Oh, yeah, God. It's just things that come to mind. My dad and mom were proud of me. They didn't quite get it. I mean, they got it as much as they were old school. They were Depression era parents. They were as hip as they could be. But my dad would always get under my skin. I was writing a song every day or 3 days and going to arts, and we did 300 or 400 songs, and I did another couple hundred myself with my solo music. And my dad would say, write a good song. And that was like, oh my God, that got under my skin. It's like if your dad said, write a good script. Don't write the silly stuff. Write a good one. That was kind of interesting. But yeah, I could, if I thought about it, I could think of 10 more examples of, dad stuff.
Yeah.
But
I get it. It feels like my own relationship with my dad, where he didn't quite get me, but was nice about it
and supportive, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, okay, wait. Yeah. So there were your parents were Depression era.
Yeah.
Right. And you were born, about a decade after the war ended.
Yeah, I think exactly. 54. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Korean War.
Oh, right. Was your father drafted or anything like that?
No, I think he was maybe, I'm guessing, let's say 38, 40 and married, and I had a kid. So they put those people like my dad and the man that became my dad's business partner, they put him at Hughes Aircraft to go work on airplane parts in Santa Monica here in California. And so he did that for, I don't know, however many years. And then they launched a business, and my parents bought property, and, they had a comfortable little life because of that stuff. They were hardworking. And my mother,
what business?
My dad and his partner co-owned about 10 dry cleaning stores in the Santa Monica, Venice, California area. So I grew up in the dry cleaning business. They wanted me to take it over. I have a 10-year-old older brother. And it's like, no, I'm good. I want to write songs. I want to grow my hair long. and hang out and do whatever God knows I was doing in the 70s. I was like, no, I don't want to be a dry cleaner. So I turned that down. I have no regrets. No.
I mean, was it just like, I'm trying to think about like also your ability to not just like focus on like, I'm going to write a song a day, or, however you and Bill were talking about, or just not even talking about, just making songs. Sorry, I just mimed playing a guitar. But, your ability to not just focus, but like, I guess, ensconce yourself in this world. I'm curious about, what allowed you, like for Bill, I can just imagine like being a child actor. I'm sure that like gave him some kind of like ability to like detach and live in a fictional world. Right. Or like, build a world for himself. And I'm kind of curious about like what allowed you to do that.
Well, talking about Art Moomy, he made some money. So he had a little bit of an easier time financially between, 20, 30, 40 years old, whatever it is. So he had the first house of anybody we know and the best cars, and it was great. And he kept working hard, but his work changed, became more musical, a little less acting. For me, gosh, well, I was working some crappy jobs. I did 4 years it was grounding though. I did 4 years working at a local drugstore, sweeping floors, cashiering, wearing a little monkey suit, a little coat. And I hated every minute of it. $3 an hour, minimum wage stuff. And I'm haunted by memories of still being, I have actually had 20 or 30 years of horrible dreams of being back in the stock rooms. And they were cavernous, they were cave-like. They haunted me. And basically, those experiences were really good for me, as much as I literally hated every minute I was at this drugstore until 1979. It spurred me on to want to work harder at my music career. It's like I was not going to end up being a stock boy. I did it till I was 24. And here I am. We're like the biggest thing for several years on Dr. Demento's show, and I'm still working at the stock, as a stock man, 20, 30 hours a week. Hating that part of my life, and then running to Arts, recording and doing the Dr. Demento show twice a week, whatever it was. And finally, I quit. What happened one day, I know I'm all over the place with my silly stories, but we were doing a song with our friend Damascus, who was a big Dr. Demento stalwart, a song called A Day in the Life of Green Acres. I had to work that day, and Damascus and Art started this song without me. I didn't get to join till 5 p.m. and I only came in to sing my part. I didn't get to co-produce it like we were doing back then. And I was pissed. It was like, I can't miss doing creative stuff because I'm at a drugstore sweeping floors and cashiering. And I quit right after that. And I've never looked back. And it was the right time to quit after 4.5 years there. And that song became pretty well known for us. And it got a lot of airplay on nationally and another big station, a new wave rock station in Los Angeles, KROQ, which you probably know about. This KROQ was like the premier new wave punk pop, station in the country for years, and we were right there and on the air and getting a lot of airplay with many of our songs in the early '80s, and it was just great exposure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was pissed I missed that recording session, and I quit right after that.
So outside of financial stuff, though, like what is it like about you personally, right, that allows you to kind of like, I guess, follow your own ideas as opposed to, when I think of your music, I think of something that is like singular to you both, right? I don't think of there's not a lot of stuff that comes to mind that is like you. Like I can, like when I name check the Dead Milkmen, it's not like they sound like you. It's just that it occupies,
it's a genre.
Yeah. It occupies similar like conceptual space in the world of music or in the creative world, right? In that like, there is a humorous facet, there's a kind of mythology, right? That kind of stuff.
Right.
And I'm kind of curious about like, what is it about you that allowed you, like where you made the real decision, like, oh, I could just take over the dry cleaning business from my dad. I could do that, but there's something else that I have that I want to follow out.
I don't think I realized it at the time what Art and I were able to do musically in the chemistry within Barnes and Barnes. We just kind of, we live it from the inside out. We just followed our ideas and our past. And, it's a tough one when and when it comes from inside of you. People used to ask, my favorite band's Jim Morrison and the Doors. They would say, how do you classify your music? And we go, I don't know. You guys have to classify it. Right. But it's, what I recognize, because I'm looking back a lot now. I didn't listen to Barnes and Barnes a lot for a bunch of years. I was busy, with a family and raising kids and being married and all that, and selling high priced items on eBay off and on for 25 years. But I've been revisiting and listening to our songs. And it's like, I'm really, happy with the output of what we did and the quality, and it holds up. And it's like, I didn't realize at the time when I'm 25, exactly we knew what we're doing, but the fact, like I say, that I always like to say I'm the number one Barnes and Barnes fan, and so is Moomy, because if we weren't, there was no point in doing it, because, we just sat there. It's just funny in life. We sat there in front of tape recorders most of our life, just the two of us, coming up with ideas. If we snickered or laughed, we thought, okay, maybe other people will like this idea, and we complete it to fruition and whatever. And so it's kind of hard. It's just, we followed our path, and the muse, the inspiration. It's just, who knows where it all, who knows? It's an amalgamation of everything that's come before in your life. And it just, these songs, I really feel, I can see it existentially. These songs, to recording artists and songwriters, they hover above us as puzzle pieces, and we channel them and rearrange the pieces, and then they come out in your own voice and your style, and people like it or they don't. I have no idea unless people say they like this song, they like this sound. It's just really hard for the artist. I don't like talking. I don't want to be too egotistical about it, but you know what? I'm a fan of many bands, and I get it. It's funny how one band speaks to you, but it's great that we have a bunch of fans. I got to do shameless plugs here. Check us out. We have a very cool Facebook page. Our fans put up a very cool Facebook page for Barnes and Barnes. Under Barnes and Barnes, you'll find it. There's about 800 and these guys are hardcore fans, old fans, new fans. I've got friends and family there. And since I have the archives, I'm putting up tons of things that I didn't even know I had: pictures, videos, photos, because rare cassettes. And the fans are really enjoying it. So I'm putting up 2 or 3 cool things a day that no one, I didn't think anyone cared. But now I'm realizing why we archived it all for 50 years. There's a place for it now with social media. So anyway, I know maybe I'm not answering the question. Feel free to paraphrase it again.
I really like the way that you phrase, like the way I talk about it is that, if you are an artist and you're being somewhat true to yourself, whatever that means, really, you just have your antenna up and you're kind of just keyed into some part of the zeitgeist or something, whatever that superstructure is, the zeitgeist, you're keyed into it in some way, and you are in some way processing what's going on and then into art, right?
Yeah.
I like the way you put that. It hovers above you, because that is kind of the way that I envision it. But is it just that you and Bill were kind of like you made your own little world and reinforced each other, and that's what allowed you to, like, it bounced back and forth. I think about like scenes a lot of times, and like when scenes give birth to a lot of different bands or comedians or artists or whatever, right? It's because they're in such a tight knit kind of creative, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm holding my hands together, but like they're just all together and they're bouncing ideas off each other at such a fast velocity. And I'm wondering if that's what you and Bill were like.
Yeah. And like I say, it was all about fun, and there are no rules, as Jim Morrison, my guy, says. There's no limits, no laws. So as Barnes and Barnes, getting in, it was a headspace. It's like, okay, we write pop music together and separately, standard type of pop music, however it comes out in our own voice. And yeah, we did continue to do that and had some success with it after Barnes and Barnes in the 70s and 80s, 90s. But as Barnes and Barnes, it's like, okay, what weird instrument can we try in this song after we've written these weird, disturbing, funny, surreal songs. Like, what instrument can we put an accordion here, or bang on an anvil, that kind of stuff. I'm not equating myself to the Beatles, but the Beatles were doing that. The Beatles were just amazing. Obviously, we can talk about Get Back if you want, but because I just came off watching that, it was amazing. But as Barnes and Barnes, it's like there were no shackles, and there still aren't. It's like, what can we do that's another bottom line I use is the word interesting. What's interesting? Mm-hmm. Which is we need to talk about Pancake Dream, the new album by Barnes and Barnes on Demented Punk Records. It's an interesting, fascinating album. But anyway, it's like we're Barnes and Barnes today. We're going to do 5 or 10 songs or one song, whatever the case may be. But let's get crazy. Let's get existential. What's interesting? That was the whole point.
Were you like that before you met Bill? Like when you guys became friends? Or you started playing music together at 14? You said
14. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you like that before that?
I guess we were. Now that again I'm looking back 45, 50 years, I guess we obviously had that within us because that's the way it was channeled starting in 1968 and 1970 as Barnes and Barnes. But yeah, we were funny, zany people. Maybe me more than Art, but I don't know. Maybe Art Mummy is as nutty as me and silly. All of these elements. It's in all of us, right? We can all be silly and infantile, and poopy duty, and sexy and scary. It's all in our id. So it's all fair play.
Right. Right. But I think that's what you hit on is what I think is interesting is that you allowed your id to kind of play, whereas a lot of other people, it gets squashed. The super ego just comes in and like takes a bite out of the id or pushes it down into a dungeon and chains it up there. You seem like, and even now as an adult, like you continue to just kind of like let it out.
Well, like I say, as Barnes and Barnes, anything goes. So that's the cool thing. If I was just recording as Robert Haimer and writing my own little pop ditties, they might be a little twisted, but not really, because I was trying to go for a specific market. But as Barnes and Barnes, anything goes. So that's been very freeing and fun for Art and I, because it's like you put on a hat. It's like you put on the Art and Artie hat. And it's like, okay, what do you want to do now? I mean, you can, Andy, you can use the funny voices, and I can make scary eyes, and I can rub my little scary beard. But yeah, because I'm doing like 4 or 5 different crazy voices these days, and I have it. You can tell I can have it within me to get a little silly. And then Andy, you better be very good. You wouldn't want to go to hell. I mean, I can do that stuff. I can. It's like a snake. I love that I can do that. And I realize not everybody can do that. And it's fun.
Was there something in your childhood that this was giving you freedom? Like, could you, like, if you were at home with your parents, were you allowed to like go into a silly voice, or would they reprimand you or roll their eyes or something like that?
God, I can't get too personal about some of my issues that I had as a child, but I guess I was able to do it. I don't think I did that as a kid until we were like, with Art and I when we were 16 or 14, whatever it was. But I guess I grew up developing that talent, quote unquote, to be able to do 2 or 3. And I've developed that more in my adult life as Barnes and Barnes is able to, express my weirdness, idiosyncrasies, eccentricities. Some of my best friends are these major talents and artists that are eccentric and can do weird stuff. We produced Crispin Glover, and he's one of the great character actors. I talked to him yesterday. I haven't seen him in about 15 years, so we're going to get together. We did 2 albums together because I recognized in him, after I saw him as George McFly and then River's Edge back in the 80s, it's like, I got to work with this guy. And we made that happen. We put out one really pretty successful album 35 years ago with Crispin. It was a hard project to do, but he's a great guy. He's a true eccentric.
Wait, why was it hard?
Crispin and Art locked horns. Crispin, as an artist, and I respect it, he's a Renaissance guy. He writes, he acts. He's a great actor. He can sing and do. We did this crazy, weird album, but he wants it all to be his way, and it's fine because his name is on the album. It's, produced by Barnes and Barnes is on the back, but he's Crispin Hilliard Glover, the artist. So, and Moomy is pretty stubborn, and Crispin would supersede Moomy, and it's like, no, I don't want to do this. I want to do this again, or redo this and do it my way. And Art wanted to kind of control the project. So he and Art would butt heads, and Art doesn't like that. I let Art boss me around because Moomy's great. He knows what he's doing. So but with Art and I, we butt heads all the time. We have like this stale marriage of 50 years. It's absolutely a marriage. And we're both married to women for 30 years and each have 2 kids. But Art and I, it's, friendships are hard and you have to work at them. And so he yells, and whoever yells louder between Art and I wins that argument and gets to do the song their way or the production their way. So, so we had trouble with the Crispin thing, and I just wanted to get the project done. And I took the middle ground with Crispin, and it's like, yes, Mr. Glover, you want it your way? You're the artist. Yes, sir. So anyway, that's the Crispin story in a nutshell.
I mean, look, whatever you're comfortable talking about, I don't want to push you at all. So, just tell me if I'm stumbling too far across a boundary. But when you're growing up, being a silly person, I was very silly. I still am as an adult, right? But I do remember being very self-aware and pushing it down a lot of times and being oh, I'm not allowed to be silly in this context. So I'll just kind of be straight-laced and boring, even if it feels bad to do that. And
well, yeah.
I'm wondering if there were forces in your childhood that were trying to get you to stop being silly.
Well, I had other issues, like I say, that, I had to work on, and, without revealing too much and doing too deep a dive on the secret id and psyche of Artie Barnes. But, I always joke to people because you're seeing the Artie character, and I'm kind of semi-normal, but in real life, off the screen and with my family and friends, I have a lot of friends. They have no idea that I do the stuff I do. They kind of know that I'm in the music business, but they haven't seen the videos. They don't hear me being silly or doing a voice. And I always contend I'm probably one of the most normal people because, you have to tamp it down in society. You can't be too crazy because, we all have to make money and we all have to get along with our friends and family. And you can't be on all the time. I can't go around and do this to my friends.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to get at is look, my wife is a stand-up, and when she's on stage, the version of her on stage is just basically her with more energy. It's not she doesn't there are some comedians I know of who are very different on stage than they are in real life.
Oh, everybody is.
Right.
One of my dearest old friends, I don't see too much lately because he's a superstar and he can buy me and sell me. He can buy and sell me is Weird Al. Sure. And I go back to 1978 with Al. And he might admit this. I was a bit of his mentor for 3 or 4 years, and we hung out all the time. He was just, my point I'm going to get to in a second about Al is that he off stage, he's normal. He's right. But he has the wherewithal to get crazy and be silly and dance around and sing funny and write these amazing, because he's the best at it, these amazing songs and parodies and make these great videos. But off stage, he's quiet. He controls it. And I love most people I know that can get a little nutty and are successful at it are just the opposite off stage because you have to fit in. Nobody likes people that are on all the time. And
of course.
I mean, I could tell you a lot of Weird Al stories.
but the character is an extension of yourself. You're not putting on when I was talking about some of these other stand-ups that I was talking about, what I meant is they're sociopaths. They just put on a different skin when they get on stage, and it's just it's weird weird in a bad way. How about
in a bad way? Okay,
not weird. How about off-putting? But for you, I see this as an extension of yourself. Correct?
Absolutely. We're probably, let's say, we're made up of 100 different facets, and this is just the Artie Barnes facet that I can project. I know what I want to do. I know what I'm able to do, and I try to do it. I'm not always successful, in the songs or the music or the writing. But I'm feeling pretty confident about it these days. But we're all able. We got, what facet do we want to to show or unleash to the world or our friends and family or business associates. We have to kind of be careful and walk a fine line, but that line is removed more as Artie Barnes. I'm trying to turn Artie Barnes into this iconic character for the year 2021. I feel like I've grown into my look. I put the hat on. I didn't wear the goggles today, but I wear these 42-year-old goggles that we used to wear in our fish head video and a bunch of our album covers. I put them on. I have the gray, scary beard, and I should have brought the goggles to model them for you. Not that your viewers can see or your listeners, but Artie has become this Alice Cooper-ish character. With Alice Cooper, he's cute. He pretends to be, and he's still around doing his thing, which is great after 50 years. But he's got a twinkle in his eye, and the Artie character has a twinkle in his eye because it's who I am anyway. But Artie now is creepy and scary, but it's all benign, and I think people get the joke. There's nothing bloody. There's no blood and guts. It's not Marilyn Manson-ish. It's creepy and scary, but it's he's a clown. Artie's a clown. So I'm trying to turn Artie Barnes into the next superstar. I feel like I'm the love child of Elvira and Pee Wee Herman.
Yeah. So I suppose that's what I'm trying to get at. What does the character allow you to do that you don't get to do in your regular life? Or what does it give you that you feel is missing from just like the humdrum, quotidian, daily routine?
Well, I appreciate the fact that I'm able to do it. That's satisfying to me. I think we all have it within us to be a little silly and goofy, and maybe some of us do it to our spouses or our friends. But I love the fact, I don't know what it is that allows me to do it. It's just, I am it. It's hard to put it into more words. I'm always trying to figure that stuff out. But I am appreciative now in my older years that I was able to do it. That I was able, Art and I especially, Art is half of this thing, and we're talking about Barnes and Barnes stuff. I mean, I'm talking about Artie Barnes personally a lot here, but that Art and I were able to share this silly private joke of 8 years with people, and then Dr. Demento gave us that outlet, and he started this whole silly thing going, and it was just, oh my gosh, I could do an hour talking about Dr. Demento and what he's meant to my life and how much I love the man. Yeah. And I sing his praises everywhere I go lately, online, in our Facebook group, in interviews, whatever we're doing. He recognized something in us and gave us the shot.
Do you think, outside of Dr. Demento, do you think you would have followed that path?
No, I absolutely, like I said earlier, I got sidetracked. Barnes and Barnes would never have happened if not for Dr. Demento cultivating this whole thing by saying, what else, I like your music, but what else you got? I can't use these songs. What else you got? And then we did Fish Heads, long story short, Fish Heads. And then it was like, you know what? Hearing your songs on the radio is the most intoxicating thing or seeing your videos or your songs on TV used or a movie, because we've had that a bunch of times. It's like, because you realize there's people listening and watching, hearing your work. And it's like, this is what your life's about. It's just, and then people giving you feedback that they like it and they're buying it or whatever it is, I think maybe that's one reason. We have egos. It's one reason artists do what they do. And,
yeah.
Of course it was to get women too. Any rock star will tell you that.
I mean, it's very meaningful. Like, this is the thing, I was thinking of when I wanted to talk to you was that Weird Al and Fish Heads and your music, when I was a kid, let me know that that you could be weird if you wanted to. And when I say could be weird, it was mean that's just what I was. It resonated with me, and I don't know why it resonated with me, but that's just who I was, who I am still, right? Yeah. And I think I'm kind of curious about what was there in your youth that gave you that similar kind of feeling that resonated with you. You mentioned the Doors.
Yeah. Well, the Beatles and the Doors, and then all the great stuff of the '60s. I was buying a record every week. I was a big rock and roll fan. I was no different than anyone else in the late '60s. I love music still today. I have all my favorite bands, but there were no real comedy artists or musical comedy artists that I revered as a kid that in the '60s. I'm trying to think. There were a couple comedy albums I liked, the Alan Sherman stuff, Mel Brooks, but I was not a big. I still am not a big comedy music fan. So there in my early formative years, there was really nothing. I loved, the Marx Brothers and W.C. Fields with their movies, but comedy music, no. And then in the '70s, when I was 20-ish, I was turned on to Sparks, and I love Sparks, and I've gotten to know them a bit, as hard as they are to know, because they're a little reclusive. They're two brothers, obviously, and they live a mile from me. And Ron goes to Russell's, they record every day. And I had Ron's email for a while, and I've actually met Ron and Russell 10 or 15 times. I think they know who I am. They've never said, "Oh, Artie Barnes, we love Barnes and Barnes," but we've been on the same labels: Columbia, Oleo, Rhino, 3 labels I can think of. And every time I run into Ron, because he walks around my area and goes to the mall and Subway sandwiches, and I run into him. I dote on him. It's like, "Ron, oh my God, your last album was so great." And it's like, and he's an interesting character. I think they're reclusive, like I said. So, but I'd love to infiltrate their world and just, I'd like to say to Ron, "Come on over. He lives a half a mile from me. Let's talk about the music business." And a lot of the people, same people we know.
Yeah, but go over get a basket of bagels. Just go over to his house.
Like he'd open the door. I'll stand there with my hat and my goggles on. "Ron, it's me. It's Artie Barnes. Open up, dude." No, it won't happen.
Yeah. I mean, what was the culture like in West LA in the '60s?
Oh my gosh. Well, we had the music that we loved, and it was, I don't want to say upper middle class. It was definitely middle class where I grew up, and Cheviot Hills is a great area near me, like I said earlier. And it was kind of normal. I had good schools. I don't know, like it was specifically like, what are you looking for? I'll be glad to elucidate.
I don't know if I'm looking for anything specific. I'm just wondering what, I guess the main thing I am trying to figure out is like, what is the stuff that allowed you to follow your own path as opposed to the dry cleaning business? What is it that allowed you to be silly as opposed to someone that pushes it down?
Well, I was just able to do it. The dry cleaning business was never going to be in my life, 100%. I was opposed to that. So was my older brother. My older brother was a school teacher, who was retired, of course, but we wanted nothing to do with my dad's business. I mean, yeah, it probably could have been lucrative or semi-lucrative, but I was not a dry cleaner. You know what? Like since I was 14, it was music. I haven't said this yet, but since I was 14 or 16 for sure, I wanted, or 14, 15, I wanted to write songs. And that was my path. And I'm really lucky because everybody else I knew didn't know what they wanted to do. They would go into college. It's like, "You know what you want to do at 15 or 18 or 20? I go, "Yeah." And Moomy and my other best friend, Paul Gordon, who has since written #1 songs and now he writes Broadway musicals, they had a band together off and on for 10 years. And they were writing great songs at 15 or 16, Art and my friend Paul. And it's the only time I've ever been jealous of Art. Literally, I'm really supportive and love him to death. The only time I was jealous, it was at 14, 15, 16, when he and Paul had this band and they were writing really good songs of the time, folk, poppy type of things at 15 or 16, and they were great. And I said, "I want to do that." And then I set about to do it personally, and I sucked. But you know what? And like I tell my kids and other young people, put in the time. If you follow your dream, put in the time. There's a great expression now. It takes 10,000 hours to get maybe good or better at something. Mm-hmm. I mean, I might have spent 50,000 hours. I'd have to add it up. How much, if you do it 6-8 hours a day for a year, how many hours is that? You do the math, but it's true. You know what? I kept writing and recording and singing. I couldn't sing. I have every tape I've ever done since I was 14, and I listened to them and I sucked. For 10 years, I couldn't write, I couldn't sing. But you know what? Year to year, I can hear the progression where I started to get better at it. And then finally, we were ready for the Dr. Demento experience stuff in 78. But by that time, I was singing better. I could play with my voices. It was not a conscious thing to just do silly voices. I never sung in a silly voice. Well, actually, I take it back. In the early Barnes and Barnes recordings, we would sing in silly voices. But that was not anything on my radar to do professionally ever until the Demento stuff hit. In the Fishhead song, I used 2 or 3 different voices. Everyone thinks it's Moomy, but it's me. I just, colored my voice. One voice would be, in the morning, laughing happy fish heads. Then the other verse, I go into the higher voice. I took a fish head out to see a movie. Didn't have to pay to get it in. And people liked the way I said, get it in. They thought, that's sexual. I'm going, no, it wasn't. It wasn't sexual at all, but that's okay if you think it was. And then, so there's 2 or 3 different voices we used in Fish Heads. And then, we just developed that more and more for later songs. It was really fun.
Yeah. Was it ever, like, when you first became friends with Bill, like, was it ever, I mean, here's a person who's like a television star at the time, right? Was there ever like a kind of, I don't know, was it ever strange or odd?
You know what? Since I knew him as that from age 12, 13, 14 on, I was just really proud of him. At first, it was like, oh, I know Billy Moomy. And then it was second nature. It's like, that's what he did. And he had, the trappings of success. And he never, misused those trappings. But he had some money. He had the cool car. He had the cool girlfriend. And it's just who he was. So it's like I never really consciously thought after that, like, I'm with Billy Moomy. But he's such I sing his praises. He's just an uber talented person that I've had the privilege to work with and have as my best friend all my life. And that's kind of rare. I don't know how many people after 50 years, 55 years still have, and get to work with their best friend.
Yeah, no, it's totally rare. It's interesting because like when I'm trying to like place myself if I was in your shoes and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I would be, I wonder if I would be deferent to someone who is, if I'm like working with someone and they have some kind of status.
Right.
That I don't have. I wonder like how that dynamic, but it seems like the dynamic, like after that wore off, it was just like a dynamic between friends.
Yeah. Art, as brilliant as Art is, he does not intimidate me one bit. And I don't think I intimidate him one bit, but I do respect him. So, at all times, it's a pretty good 50-50 balance. Although we do have psychologically, you can figure this out. It's hard to figure out, but we do have that dynamic of, I want to be 60% and make him and squash him down to be 40%. And he might feel the same with me. It's like he has to have the upper edge and the upper hand in some cases. But that's just normal brotherly fighting, and it's good natured. Usually it's good natured, but it can get a little weird. But, we just battle it out. We try to keep it 50-50. And I have so much respect for him that I'm deferential to his ideas and, but we have different ideas. I guess we both are stubborn, but I don't let him boss me around. And the same with him. It's all good.
Do you have like a close relationship with your brother? I mean, when you were growing up?
Yeah, it's a good question. No one's ever asked me that question outside of, maybe my family or friends. But my brother's 11 years older. As manic and crazy as I get and emotional, he was the opposite. He was cool. He never formed a lot of emotional attachments. He didn't get married till late in life. He didn't go crazy. If a girlfriend broke up with him, he didn't lose his mind. I would be the opposite. So my brother had to calm me down all my life. But it's funny. I tell this story lately. Yet my brother has his name is Brian. He has no musical talent. Can't sing. He can't play. He was never musical. He does photography and he's good at that. But I was musical. I don't know where I got creative stuff from. My parents weren't musical. Nobody in my family, brother, mother, father, were musical. So either I was adopted, which actually I know I wasn't, but I don't know. I got a recessive genetic gene from a grandparent or something. I don't know. It's funny. But yeah, my brother and I, we get along great. And I don't think we've ever had a crossword other than once or twice, minor stuff. But he's my older brother, so I revered him. and looked up to him. And I liked that he was non-emotional and when I was going crazy, and he was always there for me. So yeah, it's funny. I have a really good relationship with him.
That's cool. So he was someone you kind of like, you were able to be like, oh, however he acts, I kind of want to be like that in some way, or like that
Yes.
can be some like a port in a storm, I guess is a very dumb metaphor, but
No, it's great. It works. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he's been there for me during my trials and tribulations of life. And I like knowing that he's there. I was teasing because I think my dad on his deathbed said, Brian, you take care of Robert. You watch over him. So I always say that to him when I'm freaking out. It's like, come on, you promised Dad you gotta take care of me. Even though I know he can't now.
Does Bill fill in a similar role?
Sorry. No, Art and I have more of an adversarial, brotherly in a more negative way kind of a relationship. Sorry, my cell phone's going off here. So yeah, but it's all fine. You know what? I'm so used to the dynamic between Art and I that I just accept it and love him regardless, and it's all fine. You don't want to get too psychological about that.
Again, whatever you're comfortable with.
No,
I'm happy to go there.
No, like I say, I'm very transparent. I'll answer pretty much any question. So here I am.
Yeah. We're right at the end of the show. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Was there ever a time where you were trying to like walk the straight and narrow? Besides like maybe, I mean, I don't know if it's I'm just like going back to like when you worked at the pharmacy.
Yeah, the drugstore. No, you know what? Other than that drugstore job and working at actually I worked for my dad's dry cleaner between 16 and 18. I did counter work and emptied the dryers of the coins. Early in my career, when I was writing pop songs, I was calling publishers and be taking meetings, and that was more serious stuff, pop music. Other than that, you know what? I got immediately sidetracked in 24 with the Barnes and Barnes. I'll call it minor success. But other than that, I don't know if I really tried to walk the straight and narrow more than the drugstore era stuff. And that's a good question. I have to think more about that.
Yeah. No, I just asked it because I'm like, it seems like you were yourself, right? And then you were just allowed to be yourself. And I think that's unique. A lot of people get kind of like pushed down, and I said before, they get like trampled by whatever the desires are of others.
Well, my parents, I'll tell you, my parents gave me a great gift. Another thing I've never really discussed publicly is that they helped me out. They helped me out financially. They owned an apartment building. I lived there for a fifth of the rent. So those lean early years, they gave me the luxury of time. I was able to quit the drugstore, didn't have a ton of expenses. So I was able, this might have killed anybody else's creative desires, I was able to go to Art's house and drink beer and sit in front of tape recorders 10 hours a day. I didn't have to go to a job. So, because if I had to work for $3, $4 an hour, I wouldn't be sitting with you today. So my parents helped me out then. And it's like, what a gift. I wish they were here today so I could thank them again. Because I don't know if I thanked them properly early in my life. I was too busy living it to like go, gee, Mom and Dad, thank you for that gift of buying. They bought me time. You can't place a price on time. It's like they bought me time to go and be silly and drink the beer and write and record the songs.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't a lovelier gift to receive.
Yeah, and I try not to do that with my kids, but it is hard because I don't know, I'm trying to pay it forward a bit too. So, yeah, that's a fine balancing a line we have to walk too in life. But yeah, you know what? It was a gift that my parents gave me of helping me out early on 30, 40 years ago. So, wow.
Can I ask one last question then? Before Bill, did you have a friend group? Did you have friends?
What do you mean? A group of friends?
Yeah, like when you were a kid.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, everybody's got their own what, the 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever friends. And then I had a bunch of associate, friends, friends of friends. Yeah, we were hanging out all the time. I can tell you some great stories. Yeah, but yeah, I definitely, Mumi was like my best friend, but I had several other really good friends that are still friends 50 years later.
Oh, that's great.
And one of them, like I said, writes number one hit songs. Another one is an anesthesiologist or old guitar player. So everyone's kind of done pretty well. And I'm losing friends now, which is pretty horrible. Bill Paxton was a great friend. He's gone. My friend in Devo's gone, and others. Miguel Ferrer. I was hanging out. We don't have time. I was hanging out in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s with some of the most talented, creative people. I knew it at the time, but now I really look back on it. And these are all people based out of LA mostly. And people in those days didn't call. They would just show up at the door. Art and I would be writing, recording. People would come over to use the pool. We'd drink beer. We'd join them in the pool. But from George Clooney was over every other day. Miguel Ferrer, Bill Paxton, Radon Chong. I'm name dropping. Devo, a couple guys in Devo, which I love Devo. I saw Mark Mothersbaugh last month. He had me come over to his studio. I hadn't seen him in 25 years. But we were hanging out with and then a ton of people whose names you wouldn't know, but they were the best art designers, took album covers, artists, these quality of people that we were hanging out with in our 20s and early 30s. We wrote songs with the band America, Jerry and Dewey from, Horse with No Name and all that stuff. We didn't write those hits, but we wrote 20 songs with those guys, and they were over all the time. So and people would just drop over. We'd go out to sushi all the time. We're talking 1980s, Sissy Spacek. It was a nonstop parade of talented people, the cream of the crop of LA's talent. And I was around that. It was fun. Yeah. We had fun. Oh my God. Paxton was Bill Paxton. It was a superstar. He's gone now, which is terrible. We're sitting around 1980 thinking, let's do a Fish Head movie. And it's like Bill goes, hey, man, I'd like to take a shot at directing that. 3 months later, it's done. And he takes it to New York to Saturday Night Live because the goal was to get it on SNL.
Right.
Sat there for 2 days. He made them look at it. And they go, okay, we want it this Saturday in 2 days. So, things like that don't happen anymore. But Paxton made that happen.
Amazing.
And they've run it 3 times already. So, so that's, I'm going into the abridged version.
Yeah. Okay. This is the last final question. Did you grow up religious at all?
No. And I'm fine with it. I'm pretty much, I'll call myself an atheist. Religion was not part of my life. I was one of the only Jewish kids that was not bar mitzvahed, me and one other guy I know. And my kids were bar mitzvahed. It was important to my wife, which is fine. But no religion, never missed it. I lead a pretty good moral life for the most part. We all have failings, but you know what? I'd like to think of myself as a decent enough person, but without religion in my life.
Yeah. Well, thank you for indulging me with that, Robert. Thank you. This has been quite a delight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andy. It's been as I like to say, it's been a privilege and a pleasure to be with you, and I'm honored and humbled when I get to talk to people like yourself. And spout my insanity, because like I tell everyone, I'm an idiot. Don't listen to a thing I say.
No, don't say that about yourself.
I say it in a self-deprecating manner.
Well, thank you again. And we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye, oh, 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 bye. Bye.